Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible and I hope my voice is coming through. Just in case there's a problem, just let me know in the chat box. Right? Okay, I guess we are meeting for the first time. My name is Akshay Mehta and I'll be taking some of your English sessions. Right? That is the verbal ability and reading comprehension sessions. Some of them I'll be taking. What I have been told is that this is the CAT 22 batch. That is the CAT batch for the next year's exam. Right? So I'll be proceeding accordingly. I'll begin with a brief introduction of myself. As I said, I am Akshay Mehta. I have done my MBA from Gurgaon. That was in 2009. I have worked in the industry for quite a few years. And as far as my association with Career Launcher goes, it's almost close to 15 years now. Okay? So that's a bit about me. In today's session, what we will be doing is, I'll first begin with a brief background of the VARC section. And that is when we talk about the English section from the perspective of the CAT exam. What all does it entail? That is what I'll begin with. And once we are done discussing that for close to 10-15 minutes, then I'll come down to today's topic, which would be the first topic, that is vocabulary. Right? But for the first 10-15 minutes, I'll discuss the English section in general. So all of you know what is expected of you in the exam and what you can expect from the exam. Okay? That's how we'll proceed in this session. At any point in time, if you have a doubt, question, query, you require clarification, please type it in the chat box. I'll address it. Okay? I don't mind explaining twice, thrice, 4 times, 5 times, as long as you are clear about it. Okay? So any kind of a doubt, no matter how small it may seem, please ask. Okay? Okay. So what I'll do is, I'll begin with a brief introduction of the English section from the perspective of the CAT exam. Right? What I'm discussing in this session is from the perspective of the CAT exam. Just give me a minute. Okay. From the perspective of the CAT exam, the English section is known as verbal ability and reading comprehension. Right? This is how they address the English section in the CAT exam. Verbal ability and reading comprehension. In short, it is VARC. Right? So when I say VARC, I'm talking about the English section in the CAT exam. Now I'll proceed to explain what exactly it is that VA and RC entail. Right? That is, what all is it that gets covered under verbal ability and reading comprehension. Some of you might already know this stuff, right? Some of you may already be conversant with all of what I'm going to discuss in the next 10-15 minutes, but still let's just go through it so that we are on the same page as we proceed further. Right? So I'll start with the basics right now. From the perspective of the English section, that is from the perspective of VARC, there are 3 major topics. The first one is language. The second one is verbal logic. Right? The second one is verbal logic, and the third one is reading comprehension. Right? The third one is reading comprehension. So we have language, we have verbal logic, and we have reading comprehension. These are the 3 major topics that will get covered in the English sessions. Right? The various sessions that you'll have will cover these 3 broad topics. language, verbal logic, and reading comprehension. Now what I'll do is one by one, I'll explain what all comes under these three topics. That is, what all is it that language covers, what all is it that verbal logic and reading comprehension covers, right? That is what I will discuss. Any point in time you want to know something, please type it in the chat box, right? We'll discuss it. Okay, let's talk about language first. From a theoretical perspective, language has three major components. The first one is vocabulary, right? The first one is vocabulary. The second component is grammar. And the third component is idiomatic usage. Right? These are the three major components of language. That is, if you have questions on language asked in the exam, these are the three topics on which questions may be asked. You could have questions on vocabulary, you could have questions on grammar, or you could have questions on idiomatic usage. In a lot of sources, vocabulary and idiomatic usage are combined together, right? So maybe even in our sessions, we'll combine vocabulary and idiomatic usage together, right? So we'll consider idiomatic usage to be a part of vocabulary. But theoretically speaking, vocabulary is different, idiomatic usage is different. So theoretically speaking, there are three major components, right? But if in case in some source you do not find idiomatic usage specifically mentioned, assume it to be a part of vocabulary. Right? In our sessions, we cover idiomatic usage under vocabulary. Right? That's how it is. So this is the first component of VARC, which is language. Now, moving ahead, the second component is verbal logic. Right? The second component is verbal logic. Verbal logic has two major components. The first one is verbal reasoning. Right? The first component is verbal reasoning, and the second component is paragraph based questions. This is the second component, right? So we have verbal reasoning and we have paragraph based questions. Paragraph based questions in turn are of four major types. The first one is parajumbles, or what is known as sentence arrangement. Those of you who have seen a sample paper or maybe have taken CAT earlier would be aware of this question type, where there are 4 or 5 sentences given in random order. You have to rearrange those 4 or 5 sentences so that they form a logical and coherent paragraph. And that is parajumbles. So they give you 4 sentences A, B, C, D. You have to rearrange those 4 or 5 sentences. And that's parajumbles. The second question type is odd sentence identification. Here again, you have 4 or 5 sentences, generally 5 sentences, from which you have to identify which one is the odd one. Okay? You have to identify which is the odd one. So out of those 5 sentences, 4 sentences make sense coming together, but 1 sentence does not belong to that group. You have to identify which is the sentence. In some places, this is also known as out of context questions, right? It's the same thing. Odd sentence identification or out of context questions, it's one and the same thing. So you have to identify which is the sentence that does not belong to the context, right? The third one is para completion. Here what happens is you have a paragraph given from which a sentence is missing. Generally, it is the last sentence of the paragraph that is missing. So from amongst the answer options, you have to choose which sentence best completes the paragraph. Right? So that is para completion. And the last one is para summary. Okay? The last one is para summary. Here you have a paragraph given and you have 4 or 5 summaries given. You have to choose which one best summarizes the paragraph that has been given in the question. And so this is basically where you summarize the text given in the question. These are 4 kinds of paragraph based questions. Right? So verbal logic could be verbal reasoning, or it could be paragraph based questions. So this is the second component of BARC after language. And the third component, and by far the most important component, is reading comprehension. Right? It's reading comprehension. I hope all of you can see what I'm writing over here, right? I just hope the page is visible. Reading comprehension. Reading comprehension is basically the concept of an unseen passage. Right? It's basically the concept of an unseen passage where there's a passage of approximately 400 to 500 odd words. You read the passage, you understand the passage, and based on what you have comprehended from the passage, you answer the questions that follow. Right? So it's the concept of an unseen passage where a passage is given. It is to be read and understood, and based on what you have understood, questions need to be answered. Right? This is reading comprehension. Right? A lot of us have been doing this kind of question type from our school days. Right? So this is not something that is completely new. This is something that we have been doing for quite some time. It is just that the level might be higher than what we are used to. Right? So this is the third component of BRC. Right? That is the third component of English. Now, from the perspective of the exam, right? When I say exam, I'm talking about the CAT exam for now. And the other exams also we'll discuss, but in later sessions. Today is the first session. I'll only focus on CAT in this session. And what the pattern of the other exams is, which question types are more important, those I'll discuss in some of the other sessions. But today I'll focus on CAT. From the perspective of CAT, if I have a look at the last 4 or 5 year papers, right? That is what has been asked in the last 4 or 5 years. Reading comprehension has accounted for approximately 70% of VARC questions. Right? 70% of VARC questions have been questions based on reading comprehension, which is why earlier I said by far reading comprehension is the most important question type. Right? It accounts for more than 2/3 of the English section. This I am saying based on the papers of the last few years. It's likely to remain the same this year, but it could change. Right? It could change. Anything could happen at the last moment, but more or less this is what has been seen in the last few years. So reading comprehension has accounted for 70% of BARC questions. Paragraph questions have accounted for the remaining 30%. Right? Paragraph questions have accounted for the remaining 30%. This is what has happened in the last few years. The pattern could change this year, but this is what has been seen. That is 70% has been reading comprehension and 30% has been paragraph based questions. In the last few years, language questions have not been tested directly, right? So in the last few years, maybe we have not had direct questions on vocabulary, but that does not mean that vocabulary is not important. Why? Because vocabulary is required for reading comprehension. So directly, indirectly, they test language as well. But direct questions have not been seen a lot in the last few years. One important point to note over here, right, and all of you just pay careful attention to this, is that verbal reasoning, this is something that more or less has gotten incorporated into reading comprehension. So what I'm saying is, maybe there have been no separate questions on verbal reasoning, but in order to answer reading comprehension questions, your concepts of verbal reasoning need to be very clear. There is a common misconception that verbal reasoning or critical reasoning is not important because questions are not being asked. Fair enough, yes, direct questions are not being asked, but it has been incorporated into reading comprehension, right? So verbal reasoning is still very, very important. So even when we have our verbal reasoning classes, please take those very seriously, because without that, answering reading comprehension questions becomes very difficult. So essentially what I am saying is, this 70% includes verbal reasoning. So this is reading comprehension as well as verbal reasoning, right? That is 70% of the English section. The remaining 30% in the last few years has been paragraph based questions, but for all we know, it could even include language questions going ahead, right? For all we know. Generally what happens, some of you might be aware of this, is about a month before the exam, that is somewhere around mid-October, a sample paper is released by the authorities, right? And the paper format is more or less the same as the sample paper, right? So till we get to know what the sample paper is, we can never be 100% sure of what the question types will be, right? But what I have explained till now is how it has been in the last few years. So this is how the English section has worked in the last few years in the CAT exam. In today's session, right? Now what we'll do is we'll move on to today's session. In today's session, we will discuss something very, very fundamental: vocabulary. Right? We'll discuss a very basic topic, which is vocabulary. Today would be the first session on vocabulary. This is not the only session on vocabulary. We'll have a lot of vocabulary sessions after this. So in today's session, what I'll do is I'll just cover the basics of vocabulary. Right? What vocabulary mean? What all does it constitute? What are the different types of questions? And then we practice a few question types. Right? So that is what we are doing in today's session. Now, as far as CAT goes, as I mentioned around 10 minutes back, vocabulary questions have not directly been asked in the last few years. But the point is, without vocabulary, reading comprehension becomes difficult. Right? So vocabulary still is very, very important. Right? Vocabulary still is very, very important, because if you do not know the meanings of the words that have been used in the passages, you will not be able to understand the context of the passage, what it is that the author wants to say. So vocabulary is still something that forms the basis of reading comprehension, which is why we are beginning with vocabulary. So in this session, we'll do vocabulary, that is the basics of it. And in the next session, we'll do the basics of reading comprehension, and I'll link both of those together in the next session. But today we'll discuss the basics of vocabulary. Now, to define vocabulary, vocabulary is essentially about the knowledge of words. And that is fundamentally what vocabulary is all about. It is about the knowledge of words. Vocabulary is a function of how many words a person knows. Right? Simple enough. Vocabulary is a function of how many words a person knows. So if a person knows more words than I do, in that case, his vocabulary is better than mine. Right? So a person who knows more words has a better vocabulary. So the more words you know, the better your vocabulary is. Now, there is one important thing that you have to understand over here. When I say that it's a function of how many words a person knows, this knowledge could either be about the absolute definition of the word, or it could be about the usage of the word. Either ways, right? So if it's a question on definition, you have to know what the absolute meaning of that word is. But if I talk about vocabulary from the perspective of reading comprehension, there it becomes more about usage. So if you ask me the meaning of a word, I might not be able to tell you the exact definition. But if you give it to me in a context, if you show me that word used in a sentence, I'll be able to tell you what it implies. That is what I mean by usage. From the perspective of the exam, both of these are important. Definitions are also important, and the contextual usage is also important. In our initial sessions on vocabulary, we will focus more on definition. And then gradually we move on to contextual usage, especially as we do reading comprehension. Right? But this fundamental bifurcation you have to be clear about it. Right? It's about absolute definitions, and it's about how that particular word is used in a sentence. Right? So this is essentially what vocabulary at a fundamental level is about. Now what we'll do is, let's see what the various question types are that can be tested in the exam in terms of vocabulary. Right? So what are the different vocabulary question types that can be tested in the exam? Right? Let's have a look at that now. What I'll do is, I'll open the PPT now. Right? I'll share with all of you the PPT. I hope the PPT is visible. Right? These types of vocabulary questions. Right? These are 8 major types in which vocabulary questions can be asked. What I'll do is, one by one, I will explain each one of these 8 question types. Right? So I'll explain what each one of these question types refers to. And then in this session, we will discuss questions based on a few of these. Right? That is how we'll proceed. The first one is synonym and antonym questions. Synonym refers to words with similar meanings. Right? So a synonym of a word is a word that has a similar meaning. There is antonym, refers to a word with an opposite meaning. Right? So if I ask you the antonym of hot, the antonym of hot is cold. The antonym of tall is short. The antonym of rich is poor. So antonyms are opposites. Synonyms are words with a similar meaning. Then we have contextual usage questions. Right? We have contextual usage questions. I'll just explain what this question type is about. Here what happens is, you have to choose a word based on the context. Right? You have to choose a word based on the context. So for example, they give you a paragraph, a word is missing from the paragraph, and from amongst the answer options, you have to determine which is the best option that fits into the blank. Right? So that's a contextual usage question. So they'll provide you with a context, and you have to answer as per the context. Right? In exams, not only CAT, but even other exams, this particular question type has become quite important in the last few years. right? Contextual usage questions. Then we have analogy questions. These are questions that are based on relationships between words, right? Relationships between words. I'll just give you a typical example of an analogy question. If I say tall is to short as rich is to dash, right? Tall is to short as rich is to dash. Tell me what is the answer over here. Just type it in the chat box. Any one of you. Correct, Samakshi. Poor. Sambhav, correct. Tall is to short as rich is to poor. Correct. Correct. All of you got it correct. Right? Tall is to short as rich is to poor. So this is an example of an analogy question. What we are doing is we are analyzing the relationship between the first two words and we are applying that same relationship to the next two words. Right? So this is what an analogy question looks like. Analogy questions are generally meaning-based questions. Right? They're not contextual usage questions, they're generally meaning-based questions. So you have to know the meaning of tall, short, you have to know the meaning of rich and poor and able to answer this question. Right? To be able to answer this question. So this is an analogy-based question. Then let's come to the next question type, which is fill in the blank or sentence completion questions. This is simple. Here what happens is you have one or two sentences which have one or two blanks, right? These are known as fill in the blank or sentence completion questions. So they give you a sentence with missing words, right? You have to fill in those words. Fill in the blank questions, please keep in mind, are a subset of contextual usage questions. Right? Fill in the blank questions are essentially contextual usage questions. Why? Because you have to pay attention to the context of the sentence. Right? So fill in the blanks is one type of contextual usage questions. You can have other types also, which we will discuss, but this is one type of contextual usage question. So where synonyms and antonyms are meaning-based questions, fill in the blanks are more of context questions. Yes, you have to know the meaning, but you also have to know the context in which the word is used. Because a lot of times what happens is, understand this carefully, in fill in the blank questions, you have answer options that mean exactly the same thing. Still, you have to choose one of two options in order to answer the question. For example, okay? For example, one option may be costly, right? One option may be costly. The other option might be expensive. If you have a look at these two words, costly and expensive, they mean exactly the same thing. So as far as the meaning is concerned, these two words mean exactly the same thing. But the context will determine which one of these two words is to be used. Right? So in fill in the blank questions, apart from the meaning, you also have to know the context. Because have a look at the previous papers, you'll come across a lot of questions where answer options have exactly the same meaning, but it is the usage that makes a difference. Right? This concept we'll discuss in a separate class. Right? We'll have a totally separate class dedicated to this particular concept. Right? How to differentiate between words that have the same meaning. And so we'll have a separate session for this. Cloze test. Right? This is basically an extension of fill in the blank questions. Right? Cloze test is basically an extension of fill in the blank questions. Here what happens is you have a paragraph with multiple blanks. Right? You have a paragraph with multiple blanks. It's essentially still fill in the blanks, but instead of one or two sentences with one or two blanks, you have 6 or 7 sentences with 10 or 12 blanks. So still fill in the blanks, but a variation of it, but essentially still contextual usage. Right? It is still contextual usage. Then we have the question type that is based on confusable words. Right? Confusable words or commonly confused words. For example, right? For example, they might ask you to differentiate between the words among and between, right? They'll ask you to differentiate between the words among and between. The fundamental difference is among is used for more than two entities, between is used for only two entities, right? So this is an example of a question based on confusable words. It could even ask you to differentiate between something like discrete, DISCREET, and discrete, DISCRETE. The pronunciation is exactly the same. The meanings are completely different. Right? The meanings are completely different. So this is another question on confusable words. Right? Words that seem to mean the same thing but actually have completely different meanings. This question type is extremely important, especially from the perspective of the XAT exam, XLRA exam. And so those of you who are focusing on the XAT exam, this question type is something that is important. Right? So when I discuss this particular question in a separate session, I'll focus on certain questions that have been asked in the XAT exam. The next question type is based on migratory words and phrases. This is essentially about terms, or let me put it across as foreign terms now used in English. Right? Terms that were originally foreign to English, that is words that did not originally belong to the English language, but now are a part of the English dictionary. Right? Those are known as migratory words and phrases. Those terms are known as migratory words and phrases. Why? Because they have migrated from their original language to English. Right? They have migrated from the original language to English. That is why they are known as migratory terms. Simple example, you consider a word like jungle, Jungle. Jungle. Jungle is originally a Hindi word, but if you pick up the dictionary, you will find jungle to be a valid English word as well. So this is a word that has migrated from Hindi to English. Right? There are lots of such words. Right? There are lots of such words which have a foreign origin, but now are acceptable in English. This again, we have a separate, that is for this again, we have a separate session. And then we have idioms, phrasal verbs, and proverb questions. This part is essentially what I was referring to by idiomatic usage when I had defined the three components of language. Right? So I had mentioned that we would be considering idiomatic usage under vocabulary, which is why we are taking this to be a vocabulary question. Right? So idiomatic usage could be based on idioms, phrasal verbs, or proverbs. What I'll do is I'll just differentiate examples of idioms, phrasal verbs, and proverbs. Right? I'll just differentiate. Just give me a minute. Let me first explain what idioms are. Then we'll have a separate session as well, but this is just for knowledge, so that if you're doing some questions, you'll be able to know what it is about. Okay? Idioms are terms where the meanings of the individual words do not matter. Right? The meanings of the individual words do not matter. What matters is the cumulative meaning of the term. Right? What matters is individual words does not matter. Right? What matters is cumulative meaning of the term. Simple example, if I say something like once in a, okay, I'm sorry, I think there was a problem with my internet connection. I hope it's gotten fine now. An example of an idiom is once in a blue moon. So when I say once in a blue moon, this is something that refers to something that happens rarely, right? So I'm not taking the literal definition over here. I'm taking the cumulative meaning of the term. Right? This is what an idiom is about. Right? Once in a blue moon refers to something that happens very rarely. So if I tell someone that I get to see you only once in a blue moon, that means I do not see you very often. I see you only rarely. Right? This is an example of an idiom. Right? This is an example of an idiom. This is an idiomatic phrase. Another example could be something like straight from the horse's mouth. What does this mean? Anyone just type it in the chat box. What does this mean? Straight from the horse's mouth. Straight from the horse's mouth. So if I say that this has come straight from the horse's mouth, what does it mean? Straight from the horse's mouth refers to something that has come from the actual source. Absolutely, Ananya, absolutely correct. Straight from the person who has proper knowledge of the situation. 100% correct, Ananya. Right? Straight from the horse's mouth refers to something that has come from the actual source or from someone who has the proper knowledge about the issue. Right? That is straight from the horse's mouth. So again, we are not going by the individual meanings of the words. Right? Straight from the mouth of a horse. That is not what we are going by. We are going by the cumulative meaning of the term. Idioms is something that you have to have prior knowledge of. Right? So you have to have prior knowledge of what a particular phrase means. Generally, it is difficult to guess from the context. Generally, right? So this is what idiomatic phrases are about. Right? This is about idiomatic phrases. Now, the next component was phrasal verbs. Right? This is the next component, phrasal verbs. I'll just explain what phrasal verbs are. Right? I'll just explain phrasal verbs. Phrasal verb is a combination of a verb and another word. Generally, a preposition. Right? A phrasal verb is a combination of a verb and another word, generally a preposition. And here what happens is the preposition defines the meaning of the term. Okay? It is the preposition that defines the meaning of the term. The verb does not define the meaning. It is the preposition that defines the meaning. I'll give a simple example. Look at these terms. Pick up, so let me give another example. Call out, call over, call on. Right? Just have a look at these three terms. Call out, call over, and call on. In all these three terms, what is happening is the verb is call. Right? So the verb is the same. What is different is the preposition. Out, over, and on. the prepositions are different, right? And because the prepositions are different, the meanings will change. For example, call out, it generally refers to announcing. So if I say he called out my name, that means he announced my name, and that is called out. Call over generally means to invite, and he called me over to his place. That is, he invited me to his place. That is called over. Call on means to pay a social visit. Right? So if I say I will call on him tomorrow afternoon, that means I'll visit him tomorrow afternoon. So if you see what's happening here, because the preposition has changed, the meaning of the terms have changed. These are phrasal verbs. Right? These are three examples of phrasal verbs. Right? These three are individually phrasal verbs. So this is what happens in the case of phrasal verbs. Right? The verb is the same, the preposition changes and the meaning completely changes. Right? The meaning completely changes. And the third part is proverbs. Right? The third part is proverbs. Proverbs are similar, proverbs are something similar to idioms. Right? A proverb is generally a saying. That is what a proverb is. For example, basic example. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Right? An apple a day keeps the doctor away. This is a proverb. This is a saying. A bird in hand is worth two in the bush. Right? A bird in hand is worth two in the bush. That is again a proverb. The fundamental difference is that a proverb is a complete sentence. Idiomatic phrases are not a complete sentence, right? But a proverb is a complete sentence which has a specific meaning, right? Which has a particular meaning attributed to it. So that is what I mean by proverbs. So that is the next question that we could have, based on idioms, phrasal verbs, or proverbs. These are the major question types that you can have in case of vocabulary questions. Right? Starting from something as basic as synonyms and antonyms to something as complicated as idioms, phrasal verbs, and proverbs. Now, what we'll do is, we still have around an hour or so left in this session. Let's discuss some of these question types. Right? What we'll do is, in this session, that is in the next 1 hour, let us discuss synonym and antonym questions. Let's discuss confusable words. Right? Let's discuss confusable words. We'll have a look at contextual usage questions also, primarily in the form of fill in the blanks. So these are 4 question types, right, of which we'll discuss questions in this session. In the other sessions, we'll discuss the other question types, right, in the other sessions. But in this session, we'll discuss these 4 question types: synonyms, antonyms, contextual usage, fill in the blanks, and confusables. Before I come to these 4 specific question types, right, one last topic that I would like to touch upon is, what all is it that we will cover in our vocabulary classes, right? So what are going to be the various points for discussion in our vocabulary classes, right? That is in the upcoming vocabulary classes. The first one is, apart from the 8 question types that we have just discussed, are there any other question types that can be asked? Right? Yes, there are. Right? There are. They are maybe not as important as the 8 that we have seen, but there are other question types. For example, in the XAT exam, that is the XLRI exam, there have been questions on pronunciation. Right? They give you a word and then they ask you how is that word pronounced. So that is another type of vocabulary question, right, that we'll discuss in our other sessions. Which are the exams that specifically ask for vocabulary questions? As I said, CAT is no longer asking direct vocab questions, at least in the last few years. So which are those other exams? Maybe something like Symbiosis, Narasimha Monjee, which are still asking vocabulary questions. Right? That is again something that we'll discuss when we discuss the other question types. How do you remember words? What is the root word technique? Right? This is something that is known as etymology. What is the root word technique? We will have a separate session dedicated to this. Prefixes, roots, suffixes, right? Etymology. Right? We'll have a separate session dedicated to this. How do you create visual or auditory links to improve your vocabulary? That again is something that we'll discuss. And finally, what is our aim in this program? When I say this program, the entire set of sessions, right? Not this class, the entire set of classes that we'll have. It is to learn at least 1500 words in the next 6 months, right? Those of you taking CAT in 2022, you have a lot more than 6 months. So this is the bare minimum that we are required to learn in 6 months. Okay? So how do you go about achieving this? That again is something that we'll discuss in our vocabulary classes. Right? So in our later vocabulary classes, these are all points that we will cover. As I said, today is the basic vocabulary class. We will discuss basic question types. Okay? But this more or less is how we'll proceed with our vocabulary sessions. Now we'll come to the question types. If any of you has a doubt regarding anything that we have discussed till now, or any other general doubt that you have, right, you can ask. Otherwise, I'll move on to the questions now. Right? I'll move on to the questions now. What I'll do is I'll display the question on screen. Right? The question will have 4 answer options. Right? The question will have 4 answer options. Just type in the chat box which option you think is the best one. Right? Which option you think is the best one. Now, before I come to the questions, just understand one thing. In case of English questions, right, this is something that has to be very, very clear from the first class itself. And this will apply to all our classes, that is all our English sessions, whether it is language, whether it's verbal logic, or whether it's reading comprehension. Right? It will apply to all our classes. In case of English questions, it is, in case of English questions, it is not about the right answer. Right? It is not about the right answer. It is about the most appropriate answer. Okay? This is something that has to be very clear right at the outset. Regardless of whether it's a vocabulary question, grammar question, verbal reasoning question, paragraph question, or a reading comprehension question, they are not asking you to choose the right answer. They are asking you to choose the one that is the most appropriate one. Why I am saying this is because, especially in CAT and XAT, there have been questions where you have more than one correct answer, but still you have to choose the one that is the most appropriate. For example, if you remember that example that I gave you, costly and expensive. Now, costly and expensive both mean the same thing. That means that both of them are correct, right? But still you have to choose the one that is the most appropriate, right? So you go for the option that is the best one. In fact, I have also seen questions where none of the answer options are correct. Right? I repeat, none of the answer options are correct, but still you have to choose the one that is the best out of those 4. Right? So in English, it's always about the most appropriate answer. Right? So this is something that has to be always clear. In fact, even when you do questions, right, this is something that you will notice in the question directions itself. Right? I'll just show you. Just have a look at this question. Right? Don't answer the question right now. Just have a look at the question direction. And just have a look at the question direction. It says find the word that is closest in meaning to the word given in the question. It says closest, which means that we are again looking for the best option, right? We are again looking for the best option, right? It does not say has the same meaning. It says closest in meaning. So we are looking for something that is most appropriate, right? Okay, so this is a question on synonyms, right? Synonyms, as I said, are words with a similar meaning, right? So this is a question on synonyms. Now, one more point of mind which you need to note is that while doing practice questions, that is practice English questions, and whenever you are practicing English questions, be it from the class sheet or from the material that you have been given, my suggestion is even if you are not very sure of the answer, please mark something, right? Please mark something, even if you are not very sure of the answer. I repeat, this is for practice questions. This is not for the actual exam, right? Actual exam mock tests. I'm not saying this for that. I'm just saying this for practice questions. Why I'm saying this is because English is a language. To a very large extent, language is based on instinct, right? Something that sounds right or something that sounds wrong, right? So there is an element of instinct that comes in. See, because the thing is with language, no one can ever be perfect. So if I talk of vocabulary, I might know 40,000 words today, but I can still come across a word that I've not heard in my life earlier, right? That can very well happen. So I can never be perfect. So in some case or the other, I might have to guess the answer. What I'm trying to say is it is a very good thing to know how accurate your guesses are. Right? I repeat, it's a very good thing, or it's a very important thing to know how accurate your guesses are. Right? So in case you are not sure of the answer, eliminate one or two options, choose the best option, which you think is the best. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll solve at least at least five questions of each question type. Right? Okay, give me the answer to this question. Just type it in the chat box. Which is the word that is closest in meaning to the word aberrant? Just type in the answer option 1, 2, 3, 4. Ananya, correct. The two correct. It's one of those two. Vidhi, correct. Sambhav, correct. Samakshi, correct. The answer is abnormal. Right? The answer is abnormal. The word aberrant means deviating from the normal. Right? Deviating from the normal. Right? Vidhi also got it correct. Right? Deviating from the normal, which is abnormal. Delirious means very excited. Right? Delirious means very excited. Bewildered means confusing. Right? Bewildered means confusing. Aberrant is something that is not normal, which is what abnormal is. Delirious means very excited. Bewildered means confusing. Right? Okay. Next one. Tell me the answer to this. Ablution. The word is ablution. We are looking at synonyms, words with a similar meaning. The two correct. Good. Some of different answer. Samakshi, correct. Ablution means cleansing. Right? Ablution means cleansing. For example, when I wake up every morning, what I do is I wash my face, I brush my teeth. Right? So that is a part of ablution. That is a part of cleansing myself. Right? That is ablution. Purge means to remove or throw out. Right? Purge means to remove or throw out. That is what the word purge means. Okay, in the questions that we do in class, or even the questions that you have in the material that has been provided to you, the answer options, one of them will be the most appropriate one. But even the other options, please make sure that you know the meanings of those words. Because most of these answer options are words that are important words or high frequency words. Those that either have been seen in the exam or those that can be seen in the exam. Right? So if you have a doubt with any of the answer options as well, please ask. Right? So it's not only about knowing which the most appropriate option is, you also have to know why the other options were wrong. Right? That's essentially what I'm trying to say. Right? So whether it's in class or while doing practice, please know why the other options are wrong as well. Right? So wherever you have a doubt, please ask. Okay, next question, acclivity. What is the answer? Ritu, correct. Good. Sambhav, correct. Good. Samakshi, correct. Ananya, correct. It's option 1, elevation. Right? It's elevation. Acclivity refers to upward slope. Right? Acclivity refers to upward slope, which is exactly what elevation means. Right? Which is exactly what elevation means. Elevation is going upwards. A drift means floating free. Right? A drift is floating free. Meager means deficient. Deficient or less. Right? That is meager. Meager is something that is not sufficient, something that is deficient or less. Right? That is meager. Okay, the doubt is in the first question, is delirious used in a negative or positive context? Generally, it's used in a negative context. In most of the cases, it is negative, but in some rare cases, just as a figure of, I'm sorry, as a matter of speech, it could be used in a positive context, but 90% of the cases it's negative, delirious. So it could be a sentence like he's delirious from the pain, right? So he's very, very excited. He's maybe not in his complete senses, right? Something like that. Okay. Next question. Hydrosis. In some places, it's hydrosis as well. It's hydrosis. What is the answer? Ritu, correct. Sambhav, different answer. Ananya, correct. The answer is sweating. The answer is sweating. Vranda, correct. Right? The answer is sweating. The word is hydrosis. Some places it's given as hydrosis as well, but generally the pronunciation is hydrosis. It is sweating. It is not dehydration. Dehydration is and maybe an extreme form of sweating where fluids are completely lost. But hydrosis is basically the act of sweating or the process of sweating. Right? Hinder basically means to prevent. Right? Hinder basically means to prevent. Humdrum is boring. Okay? Humdrum is boring. Okay. Next one. Impervious. Tell me what the answer is over here. Samakshi, different answer. Sambhav, correct. Impervious. Ritu, different answer. Samakshi, correct now. Correct. The answer is option 4. Okay? The answer is option 4. Impervious means unreceptive, right? Impervious means unreceptive. Impervious basically means unaffected. So when I'm not affected by something, I'm impervious to something. Right? So if I'm impervious to what is happening around me, it basically means that I'm not affected by it. That means I'm unreceptive to it. Impeccable basically refers to something that is perfect. Right? Impeccable is something that cannot be better. Right? Something that cannot be improved. It's already in the best form. Right? That is impeccable. Impeccable is a very positive word, whereas impervious a lot of times is used in a negative connotation. Right? A lot of times impervious is used in a negative connotation, but impeccable is mostly a positive word. In a separate session, this is something that we focus on the word and negative, and that is how differentiate, and that is something that we'll pick up in another session. Okay, so these were certain questions on synonyms. Now let's have a look at certain questions on antonyms. Okay? Let's have a look at certain questions on antonyms. Just give me a minute. Yeah, try this question, all of you. Badger, the word is badger. Give me the opposite. Samakshi, different answer. Ananya, correct. Okay, the meaning of the word badger is harass or trouble. Sambhav, correct. Sambhav, correct. Good. The meaning of the word badger is harass or trouble. That is what the word badger means. Badger has another meaning. Badger is a kind of animal as well. Right? That is a noun. Here, badger is a verb. Right? But badger could also refer to an animal. The word goad, this means force. Hound means to chase. Right? Hassle means to trouble. The correct answer is option 3. Parul, correct. Right? The correct answer is option 3. Please. Right? Goad is generally a negative word. Hound is generally considered to be a negative word. Hassle is definitely a negative word. Right? Badger is also a negative word. The only positive word that we have over here is please. Right? That's a positive answer option, right? So that's the most appropriate option. In this case, the only correct answer. Right? In this case, the only correct answer. Next question, banal. Right? The word is banal. It's not banal. What is the right answer here? Ananya, very good. That is the answer. The word banal means unoriginal. Sambhav, correct. Parul, correct. Right? The word banal means unoriginal. The answer is option 4, original. This is a word, right? Please mark this word specifically. This is a word that has been seen in a lot of exams. Right? This is a word that has been seen in a lot of exams, not only in vocabulary questions, but also in reading comprehension. Right? Also in reading comprehension. The word banal. Vapid means dull. And also means dull. Right? Means exactly the same as banal, which is unoriginal. Right? So options 1, 2, and 3 are similar to the meaning of the word banal. Option 4 is exactly the opposite. Right? So the answer is option 4. Magnanimous. Tell me the opposite. Ananya, correct. Parul, correct. Samakshi, different answer. Ritu, that is the meaning. We are looking for the opposite. Somehow different answer. Okay, magnanimous means generous, right? Magnanimous means generous, kind, generous, a person who freely gives to somebody else. The answer is stingy, option 2. Right? The answer is stingy. Stingy means miserly. Right? Stingy means miserly. When I say miserly, basically a person who is not generous. Right? A person who is not generous. Right? So the answer is stingy. Option 1, benign, means harmless. Right? Benign means harmless. Affable means friendly. Right? Affable is benevolent refers to somebody who does good. Benevolent is similar to magnanimous. Right? Benevolent is similar to magnanimous. We are looking for the opposite. That is why we go with option 2. Right? Because we are looking for the opposite. Tell me the answer to this question. Caliber. The opposite. We are looking for the opposite. Caliber. Ananya, good. Sambhav, correct. Parul, correct. Good. Sambhav, good. Samakshi, correct. The answer is option 1. Ineptness. Right? Ineptness. Caliber refers to degree of skill or excellence. Right? Ritu, correct. Caliber refers to degree of skill or excellence. Ineptness refers to incompetence. It is exactly the opposite. Right? Ineptness means incompetence. So where caliber is a positive word, ineptness is a negative word. The other 3 options, distinction, competence, capability, these are all positive words. Right? These are all positive words. So the original word is positive. We are looking for the opposite. So we go with the negative word. The only negative word is ineptness over here. Right? Okay. Next question. Camaraderie. Tell me the answer to this question. Ananya, correct. Camaraderie. Parul, correct. Sambhav, different answer. Okay. The word means spirit of friendship. Vranda, correct. Spirit of friendship. Camaraderie refers to the spirit of friendship. This word is essentially a positive word. And friendship, brotherhood, etc. Right? It's a positive word. The answer is option 4. Right? The answer is option 4. Antagonism. Right? Antagonism. Right? I'm sorry, antagonism. The answer is option 4. Antagonism refers to opposition or hatred. Right? Antagonism refers to opposition or hatred. Right? Antagonism refers to opposition or hatred. Option 3, conviviality refers to social, someone who is social. Options 2 and 3, right? They essentially mean the same thing. Right? Options 2 and 3, they essentially mean the same thing. Right? Intimacy refers to closeness or familiarity. Right? Closeness or familiarity. Options 1, 2, and 3 are not negative words. And that is not necessarily negative words. Antagonism is a negative word. Camaraderie is a positive word. So that is what the answer is. Okay? Okay, let's do a couple of more questions, then we move on to the next question type. Candid. Tell me the answer here. The opposite. We are looking for the opposite. Candid. Samakshi, correct. Ritu, different answer. Parul, different answer. Okay. The word candid refers to something that is honest or frank. Right? Candid refers to something that is honest or frank. Basically, straightforward. Right? Basically, straightforward. That is candid. Right? That is candid. Honest, frank, or straightforward. Forthright is a synonym. Right? Forthright means straightforward. Blunt is also a synonym. Right? Blunt is also a synonym. Blunt means when you say what you want to say. Right? You don't mince words, you say exactly what you want to say. That is blunt. Ingenuous. Right? Ingenuous refers to innocent. Right? Ingenuous refers to innocent. Parul, the answer is correct. Right? The answer over here is tactful. Right? The answer here is tactful. Tactful basically means taking care while speaking, or basically communicating. When you take a lot of care about what you are saying or what you are writing, so that it does not come out offensive to someone, that is tactful. Right? So the answer is option 1, tactful. Candid is you say whatever you want to say. Tactful is where you take care about what you want to say such that it does not offend somebody else. Right? So you be careful. That is tactful. Forthright and blunt are synonyms of candid. Ingenuous refers to innocent. Right? Ingenuous refers to innocent. Candid, again, mark this word. This is a very important word. Even option 4 for that matter, it's not the answer. Option 4 is not the answer, but as a word itself, it is important. Right? From the perspective of vocabulary, ingenuous is an important word. Right? Okay. One last question on antonyms. Tell me the answer to this one. Chagrin. The word is pronounced as chagrin. The opposite of this word. Parul, different answer. Ananya, different answer. We are looking for the opposite. The two of you, what you have given is closer to the meaning of the word. Different answer, Ananya. Sambhav, different answer. Samakshi, correct. Good. Parul, different answer. Okay. The word chagrin, right? This word refers to disappointment. Right? It refers to disappointment. Ananya, correct. Right? It refers to disappointment. The answer is glee, option 3. Right? The answer is glee, option 3. Glee means happiness. Right? Chagrin or chagrin, depending upon the British or the American pronunciation. Chagrin or chagrin is disappointment. Option 3, glee, is happiness. Right? Grumpiness is again a negative word. Right? Grumpiness again is a negative word. Grumpiness is basically the characteristic of being irritable. Right? That is grumpiness. And so if I say that a person is grumpy, that person is irritated. Right? Spleen, option 2. Spleen refers to anger. Spleen has another meaning from a biology perspective. Right? But in this context, spleen refers to anger. He vented his spleen on me. That means he vented his anger on me. Right? Vexation is worry or annoyance. Right? Vexation is worry or annoyance. So essentially, if you see, the word is negative. Chagrin is negative. It is disappointment. The only option that is positive is glee. Right? The only option that is positive is glee. The other three options, grumpiness, spleen, vexation, those are all negative options. Right? Those are all negative options. Question on synonyms and antonyms. And we have done around 12-13 questions right now. Questions on synonyms or antonyms in a lot of cases can be done using the concept of positive or negative, which is something that we'll discuss in one of the other sessions. Right? But in some cases, it is not necessarily about positive or negative. Right? For example, just have a look at the previous question that we did. The word candid. And candid is a positive word. In a lot of cases, tactful can also be a positive word. Right? So in this question, question 21, it was not about positive, negative. Right? Here, even the opposite word is positive or could be positive. But in a lot of cases, in a lot of questions, you can solve the question by using the concept of positive and negative connotations. Right? This concept of positive, negative, as I said, we'll be discussing it in a lot of detail in one of our other sessions. This concept of positive, negative, just make a note of it. That is, just note down this term. This is known as the concept of connotation. Okay? This is known as the concept of connotation. That is, does the word have a positive connotation or a negative connotation? So in most of the cases, synonyms and antonyms you will be able to solve using connotations. In one word question like the 21st question, connotations won't help. You will have to know the dictionary definition. Okay? But a lot of cases, connotation helps. Okay, so we have discussed questions of two types till now, synonyms and antonyms. Now what we'll do is, let's discuss confusable words. Right? Let's discuss confusable words. I'll just first explain what this question type is about. These are related to words that seem to mean the same thing or sound similar. Right? These are related to words that seem to mean the same thing or sound similar. What I mean by that is, if I ask you the difference between these two words, then just have a look at these two words. One word is beside, the other word is besides. Right? So it's an S that has been added in the second word. Now tell me which one of these two words means next to. Is it the first word or is it the second word? Sambhav correct, Ritu correct, Parul correct, Ananya correct. Yes, Siddhant correct. Good. It is the first word. Right? The first word means next to. The second word, it means in addition to. Right? The second word means in addition to. So this is an example of confusable words or confusing words. Right? Or words that sound confusing, pair of words. It's a very close call as far as the spelling goes, but the meanings are completely different. Right? The meanings are completely different. Right? So this is what is meant by confusable words. In questions, right? Just a second. In questions, this concept is tested in the form of contextual usage. Right? In questions, this concept, that is this concept of confusable words, is tested in the form of contextual usage questions. What they'll do is they'll give you a context and then they'll ask you to differentiate amongst those two terms. Right? They'll ask you to differentiate between those two terms. I'll give an example of what I mean by contextual usage. Right? I'll just give an example of a question. So this is the question. In a match, the umpire must be totally uninterested or disinterested. First option or second option? Vranda, correct. Ananya, correct. I'm sorry, Vranda, it's a different answer. Samakshi, different answer. Ritu, correct. Siddhant, correct. Sambhav, correct. The answer is the second option, disinterested. Right? The answer is the second option, disinterested. Uninterested, this word means not interested. See, we are talking about a match and we are talking about the umpire or the referee. The umpire definitely has to be interested, right? So it cannot be the first option. Can anyone tell me what the second word means? Those of you who got it correct, right? Most of you got it correct. Just tell me the meaning of the word disinterested. Ananya, very good. Impartial. Impartial. The word disinterested means impartial. Basically unbiased. Right? So in a match, the umpire must be totally impartial. Right? That is, he should not be taking sides. He must be unbiased. So this is an example of a contextual usage question where you have to differentiate between two close words. Right? You have to differentiate between two close words. Now, let's see how an actual question is asked, that is with answer options, how such questions are asked. Right? Let's have a look. Just give me a minute. Okay. Have a look at this question. The question is on the screen. This is question number 31. Here you will notice that there are four sentences. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? There are four sentences. In each of the four sentences, you have to choose between two options. So for example, in the first sentence, you have to choose between prosecution and persecution. In the second sentence, you have to choose between harbored and harnessed. Third sentence, you have to choose between interment and internment. And option 4, I'm sorry, sentence 4, you have to choose between butchered and marauded. Right? So depending upon which option you are choosing in each sentence, you will get a sequence of letters. So mark the correct sequence of letters. Take your time, take 2 minutes if you want. Tell me what the correct answer is. Please ask if you are not clear about the question type. This question type has earlier been seen in CAT as well as in XAT. Okay? CAT sometime back. Okay? But XAT, this is common seen. Parul, different answer. Maybe you can do 1 or 2 sentences and then eliminate the options, right? The strategy is up to all of you. But if you can get all the 4 sentences right. Ananya, very good. Samakshi, good. Correct. Good. Take a minute or so more. The remaining of you. Ritu, correct. Good. Sambhav, good. Another different answer. Okay, let's discuss this. Okay, let's discuss this. Sentence 1 says, among the groups, the Nazi regime and its Axis partners singled out for prosecution. Prosecution means to take legal action. Right? To take legal action. Prosecution is basically where you try to prove that someone is guilty. And that is prosecution. And where you take legal action and you try to prove that someone is guilty. That is prosecution. Persecution has a different meaning. Persecution means unfair treatment. It is basically unfair treatment which is based on identity. That is, because of someone's identity, they are treated unfairly. Basically, discrimination. Right? Persecution is discrimination. So if you have a look at the contextual usage, it says the Nazi regime and its Axis partners singled out for dash on so-called racial grounds. So we are talking about something that has been done based on identity. That is why the correct word is persecution. Right? The correct word is persecution. So here the answer is B. Right? Here the answer is B. Because we are talking about treatment that has been done on racial grounds. And so based on their identity, some kind of treatment has been meted out to them. That is persecution. Right? So the first one is B. Second one, harbored means sheltered. Right? Sheltered or possessed. Harbor is a place where a ship takes shelter. Right? Harbored also means possessed. Harnessed means utilized. Right? So I say that solar energy has been harnessed, it has been utilized. Here the sentence says, drawing support from many non-Nazi Germans who dash social prejudice, right? Who possessed social prejudice, right? So here the answer is A. Right? They did not utilize prejudice. You cannot utilize prejudice. You can possess prejudice, right? Okay. The third one, this is a very important pair of words. Right? The third one, this is a very important pair of words. Please note the difference. Inter means to bury. Right? Inter means to bury. That is interment. Interment means burial. Right? The first one means burial. intern means to confine or imprison. Confine or imprison. Right? So internment means imprisonment. Okay? Internment means imprisonment. Okay? That is internment. So here it says, under the Nazi regime, German authorities subjected Roma to arbitrary dash, forced labor and mass murder. So we are talking about something that has been wrongly done to them. Okay? So imprisonment makes more sense. Right? So it is B over here. Right? Forced labor, imprisonment, mass murder, etc. The second option makes more sense. And option 4, I'm sorry, sentence 4. It says German authorities butchered or marauded tens of thousands of Roma. Butchered is killed. Right? Butchered is killed. Marauded means looted. Right? Marauded means looted or plundered. Right? So now here it says German authorities dashed tens of thousands of Roma in the German occupied territories of the Soviet Union, Serbia, and thousands more in the killing centers. It talks about killing centers. The previous sentence talked about mass murder. So the context here is of killing someone or murdering someone. That is why butchered is a better option. Please note, I am not saying that marauded is wrong, but butchered is better because that is what the context is. And how do I know that is the context? Because of the word killing and because of the word murder. So here it is A. Right? Here it is A. So the answer here is option 3. Right? The answer here is option 3. Right? It is BA, BA. Right? It is BA, BA. This is a typical question on confusable words asked in the form of contextual usage. Right? Asked in the form of contextual usage. Let's do one more question of this kind. Right? Let's do one more contextual usage question based on confusing words. This is the question. Take your time. Tell me what the right answer is. Time, the right answer is. This is question 32. And then a different answer. Parul different answer, Sambhav different answer. Correct. Good. Ritu correct. Good. Samakshi good. Pulkit good. Parul, different answer. Okay, let's discuss this. Right? Let's discuss this. The first one says while Arctic sea ice has shown a relatively steady dash, right? Shown a relatively steady dash, it says descent versus decline. Right? Just note the definitions of these terms. Descent means to move down physically. Right? If something moves down physically, that is known as descent. So if someone is climbing down from a mountain, right? Climbing down from a mountain, that is descent. Why? Because the person is moving down physically. The word decline means reduction. Right? The word decline means reduction. And this word, the word decline, is generally used in the context of a reduction in number of something. Right? The reduction in the number of something. So descent is moving down physically and decline is reduction. If you have a look at this sentence, it says Arctic ice has shown a relatively steady dash in square mileage. What we are talking about is square mileage. Right? What we are talking about is square mileage, which is why the word decline is better. Right? The word decline is better because what is becoming less? The square mileage is becoming less. Right? Square mileage, that is the area cannot move down physically. There cannot be a physical movement in the area. But what can happen is there can be a reduction in the area. This is a very close pair of words. Right? This is a very close pair of words. Those of you who could differentiate between these two words, right, that's very good. Right? That is even apart from the answer option, that is apart from elimination of the answer options, those of you who were clear about the fact that B is better than A, right, that's very good. The second one, its southern counterpart has yielded more erroneous dash erratic and controversial data. Erroneous is something that contains an error. Right? Just understand this. This again is a close set of words. Erroneous is something that contains an error. Right? Whereas erratic is something that is inconsistent. Erratic is something that is inconsistent. Right? Something that is inconsistent. When I say inconsistent, it could even be unpredictable. Right? It could even be unpredictable. Now, its southern counterpart has yielded more erroneous or erratic and controversial data since monitoring began in the late 1970s. Now, technically, if you see, there is nothing wrong with either one of these two options. Erroneous is also correct, erratic is also correct. But as I had said, we are going to now look for the most appropriate option. Right? I repeat, both are correct. Let me look for the most appropriate option. How will I know the most appropriate option? The context will tell me. What is the context? The context is of controversial data. What is controversial? Controversial is something about which there is no proper agreement. Right? It is debatable. Now, between wrong and inconsistent, right? Between wrong and inconsistent, just type it in the chat box, which is or which could be controversial. Something that is wrong, is it more likely to be controversial, or something that is inconsistent is more likely to be controversial? Just type it in the chat box. That is correct. Ananya correct. Vranda correct. Something that is inconsistent, that is likely to be more controversial. Right? Because something that is wrong is wrong. Right? Something that is wrong is wrong. There is no controversy about it. So if 2 plus 2 is equal to 5, that is wrong. That is not debatable. Then the fact that 2 plus 2 is equal to 5 is wrong. That's not debatable. But something that is inconsistent will be controversial. That is why B is a better option than the first option. But I repeat, option A is not wrong. Right? I repeat, option A is not wrong. Option B is a better option. Right? Option B is a better option. Sentence 3 says the February 14 mark for Antarctic ice surpasses or supersedes lows seen around this time in 1997. Now, just make a note over here. The word supersede means to overtake, whereas surpasses means to cross a particular level, right? It means to cross a particular level. That is the difference, right? Supersede means to overtake, surpasses means to cross a level. And it's a very fine difference, but surpass is always with reference to a level. In this case, surpass is a better word. Why? Because it says February 14 mark. The February 14 mark for Antarctic sea ice surpasses lows seen around this time in 1997. So the context is of a level. Okay? I'll give you an example of supersedes. And that is those of you who are confused about the word supersedes, I'll give an example. See, let's say, for example, in my organization, there is a person who is a manager. I have another employee who is a senior manager. Right? I'm giving an example of supersedes. I have a manager, I have a senior manager. And what happens is suddenly there is a vacancy for vice president. Right? Suddenly there is a vacancy for a vice president. Now, logically speaking, if there is a vacancy for a vice president, it is the senior manager who should become vice president. Why? Because he was senior to the manager. But in case, if instead of the senior manager, the manager becomes the vice president, this is known as superseding the senior manager. Right? This is known as overtaking the senior manager. So if instead of senior manager, manager becomes vice president, he has superseded the other person. Right? He has superseded the other person. So here it is not about level, here it is about physically overtaking somebody else. But surpass is a better option because of February 14 mark. Again, like in the previous sentence, supersede is not wrong. Surpass is a better option. Right? So this is A over here. And sentence 4, theorizing versus prognosticating. Right? Theorizing versus prognosticating. Prognosticate means to predict the future. Right? Prognosticate means to predict the future. Theorizing means to give a theory. Right? Theorizing means to give a theory. Prognosticate means to predict the future. Now, let's have a look at the context. In 2012, Antarctic sea ice actually hit a record monthly high, with scientists dashed that melting ice shelves were contributing to the growth. Just look at this. We are talking about 2012, and we are saying melting ice shelves were contributing. When I say were contributing, I am talking about the past. Why past? Because the word were, W-E-R-E, refers to the past tense. So this sentence is about the past. So prognosticating cannot be the answer. Why? Because prognosticating is always about the future. So the answer is A. Okay? The answer is A. Right? Prognosis is about the future. This sentence is about what has happened in the past. Right? So the answer is option A. So it is BBAA. The answer is option 3. These are difficult questions on vocabulary. These are difficult questions on vocabulary. And these are not simple questions. Those of you who even got one out of these two questions correct, I would say that is pretty good. Those of you who got both the questions correct, right, that is very, very good. And especially if you got the answer to each and every sentence. But even if you got it by elimination of answer options, doesn't matter. If you got both the questions correct, that is excellent. Right? So this is a question on confusing words in the form of contextual usage. Right? Okay. What I'll do is I'll just take 5 more minutes to discuss a typical fill in the blanks question. Right? Before this, we have seen synonyms, we have seen antonyms, we have seen confusing words. Now let's have a look at a typical question on fill in the blanks. Okay? Let's have a look at that. Just give me a minute. Try this question. If I'm not wrong, I'm not 100% sure, but if I'm not wrong, this is an old cat question. Right? Old cat question. So this will give you an idea of the difficulty level that was asked. And tell me the answer. It's a fill in the blank question. And then a different answer. Sonakshi, different answer. Siddhant, different answer. Sambhav, different answer. Ananya, different answer. Ritu, different answer. Okay. Let me just explain to you how to approach such questions. Right? I'll just explain how to approach such questions. In case of two blanks, and specifically in case of two blanks, like for example, in this question, we have two blanks, right? Try to determine if the two blanks, then when I say two blanks, those two words that fit into the blank should be of same, or let me just put this across differently. In case of two blanks, determine if the two words make the terms associated with them. And in case of two blanks, try to determine if the two words make the terms associated with them similar or dissimilar in connotation. Okay? Just take this down. I'll explain what I mean by this. In case of two blanks, try to determine if the two words make the terms associated with them similar or dissimilar in connotation. Right? Just make a note of this. I'll explain what I mean with reference to this question. When I say connotation, right? When I say connotation, what I mean is, are those negative words or positive words? This is one approach of solving such questions. Okay? This is one approach of solving such questions. Right? I'll just explain what I mean. Right? I'll explain it with the reference of this question. Look at the first set of words. It says dash bans and clearance delays. Right? It says dash bans and clearance delays. Right? So this portion, dash bans and clearance delays, this portion have brought the natural resource sector in India to a dash position today. So this is the second portion. Right? This is the second portion. Now tell me, These two parts, dash ban and clearance delays, should it be similar to the position in connotation? Okay, first of all, tell me, dash bans and clearance delays, is this positive or is this negative? Tell me this. Bans and clearance delays, is it positive or is it negative? Samakshi, correct. Sambhav, correct. Vranda, correct. It is negative. Why? Because we are talking of bans, we are talking of delays. Ananya, correct. Vidhi, correct. This is negative. I'm saying that something negative has brought the natural resource sector in India to a dash position. So this position, which has been created by the delays and bans, should this position be positive or should this position be negative? Sambhav, correct. This position itself should also be negative. Why? Because it has been caused by something negative. It has been caused by bans and delays, right? Clearance delays. So something negative will cause a negative position to come about. So what I'm saying is I'm looking for an option. That is, I'm looking for the second word, that is negative. Because of which option 1 and option 3 cannot be the answer. Why? Because sustainable is a positive word. Enviable. What is enviable? Enviable is something that is admirable. Right? This is again a positive word. So sustainable and enviable cannot be correct. Why? Because this has been caused by delays. If there have been bans, if there have been delays, it cannot lead to a positive situation, right? Delays can only lead to a negative situation. So options 1 and 3 cannot be the answers. Now, I have to choose between options 2 and 4. Right? I have to choose between options 2 and 4. Options 2 and 4 are both acceptable, but I have to choose which option is better. Option 2 says justified bans and clearance delays. Right? Justified bans and clearance delays. Just make a note here. We'll discuss it in our connotation class also. Whenever you have something in the form of X and Y, please make sure that the connotation is similar. Right? The connotation is similar. It should not be of a different connotation. The word and is used to join something that is similar. Ananya, correct. That is the answer. Correct. Clearance delays. This is a negative term, which means that I cannot use the word justified. Why? Because justified is a positive word. So X and Y, if Y is negative, X cannot be positive. So justified is not correct. The answer is option 4. Untenable means undefendable. Undefendable or unjustifiable. Right? Undefendable or unjustifiable. The answer is option 4. This is an actual exam question. Right? This is an actual exam question. So this gives you an idea of the difficulty level that is expected of you. I'm sorry, the solving of which is expected of you in the actual exam. Right? We are going by connotations. A lot of vocabulary questions can be done by connotations, and including contextual usage questions, which this one was. Right? So this is an important concept. Connotations, we'll be taking it up in one of our other sessions on vocabulary. So what we'll do is, let's stop here. In case any of you has a doubt, please ask. Then any doubt that you have, something that you want clarified, etc. Our next session will be a reading comprehension session. Right? This was a basic vocab session. The next session is a basic reading comprehension session. Once we are done with a couple of more sessions, we will again come back to vocabulary. But for now, try to improve your vocabulary by any means possible. What the different approaches are, I will specifically discuss that in the next session on vocabulary. But for now, if you have a word list given to you in the reading material, in the preparatory material, go through that, start going through that word list. Right? If you read on a regular basis, any new word that you come across, look it up in the dictionary. Right? So either learning from a word list or looking up new words while reading the newspaper or a magazine on a regular basis. Try to improve your vocabulary gradually. How specifically you do it, right? I will discuss that in a separate session. So today was only about the basic concepts of vocabulary. Your basic takeaway from today's session should first be about what are the different things and asked in English, which is what I covered in the first half an hour. And secondly, what vocabulary is basically about and what the different question types could be. Right? Thanks a lot. We'll stop here. In the next session, we'll start with the basics of reading comprehension. Please do not miss the next session because RC is 70% of English. And in fact, at least in the last few years. So please don't miss the next session. It is reading comprehension. Thanks a lot. Thanks.